The Locked On Podcast Network presents The Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
Finally, there is a resolution to the James Cook situation.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast.
Well, folks, welcome in. There is a resolution regarding the Bills and James Cook. Things have changed. And the Bills and James Cook reached a 4-year, $48 million contract extension with $30 million guaranteed. It happened, and it's been a journey going back to February when James Cook pinned a comment on his own Instagram Live saying he wanted $15 million a season, sitting out anything that was voluntary, showing up to camp, practicing for the first week and a half, then all of a sudden holding in, warming up against the Giants, and then not playing. And then the hold-in continues, but then it quickly changes, and he practices yesterday and today. We have a contract extension. So I want to tell you how I feel about this thing. We'll break down what we know about the deal and focus on moving forward and putting the saga, the drama, if you will, behind us. So this deal comes in at $12 million per season average annual salary, which is exactly the amount that I found to be reasonable. That was kind of in my head, even going back to February when we were talking about what's the right number, what's a fair number. That's where we landed. And the talking point that I had was 15 million's just not reasonable. That's not a reasonable number. And James did all he could to get 15. He forced the issue as hard as he could. Shot for the moon. But ultimately, reality prevailed here and a deal got done. So in terms of average annual salary, $12 million, like I said, James Cook, 7th highest paid running back in the NFL, or I guess tied for 6th. Number 1 is Saquon Barkley at 20.6. Christian McCaffrey, number 2 at 19. Derrick Henry, number 3 at 15. Jonathan Taylor, number 4 at 14. Alvin Kamara, number 5 at 12.25. Then you have Josh Jacobs and James Cook at number 6 at $12 million. Now keep in mind, Josh Jacobs' $12 million entering 2024 is not the same as James Cook's $12 million entering 2025 because the cap went up. And then at number 8, you have Aaron Jones and Kyron Williams at $11 million. In terms of APY, it comes in at a reasonable spot. And you know me, I care a lot about percentage of cap at signing. I think that's really important as the cap continues to go up. I mean, it's been over a $50 million increase over the last 2 years. We cannot compare deals that were signed 2 years ago to ones that are signed today when the cap is $50-something million more than it was. So this deal for James Cook comes in at 4.3% of cap at signing, which is also 7th in the NFL. Christian McCaffrey, 7.44% of cap at signing, number 1. Saquon Barkley, number 2 at 7.4. Jonathan Taylor, number 3 at 6.23. Derrick Henry, number 4 at 5.37. Alvin Kamara, number 5 at 4.8. Josh Jacobs, number 6 at 4.7. James Cook, number 7 at 4.3. And if you remember all the analysis that we had about where this deal should land, I drew that line right there under Josh Jacobs and said, it shouldn't be more. It shouldn't be more than Josh Jacobs. It winds up being the same APY, but about 0.5% less percentage of cap at signing. Again, we're talking about a deal under a different cap limit. I think this comes in exactly at a fair and reasonable dollar amount. Not the 15 that James Cook initially was looking for, but that's a negotiation, right? You can only come down. You're not going to go up on your asking price without new information. And so this comes in at a reasonable spot. That's one of the big words that has been on my mind this entire situation. And now that there's a resolution, I land on that word reasonable. And I'm also relieved. I did not enjoy dealing with this for the last several months. It's an unavoidable conversation. There's new information all the time, and you're just going to ride it out. But yeah, it's been annoying. It's been very annoying. So I'm relieved that it's over with, and I'm relieved that it reached a reasonable conclusion. Now, the part of this deal that is on the higher side is the guaranteed money at signing. James Cook gets $30 million guaranteed at signing. That's the third most guaranteed money at signing of any NFL running back contract. Number one, Saquon Barkley at 36. Number two is actually Ashton Genty, who's a rookie, top 10 pick for the Raiders. 35.89 guaranteed at signing. Then you have Cook at 30. Next is Derrick Henry at 24. So this is definitely a deal that maybe it doesn't reach the APY goals that James Cook had. It's certainly, in terms of guaranteed money at signing, puts him in a really good spot. So that's probably the big win for James Cook here. Now, obviously, with any contract, it's all about finding out the details. You know, I always say that. Wait for the details. And you should. But here's the good part about what we know right now. It's not going to be more than $12 million a season, right? Whenever we say wait for the details, it usually is because it tells a story about how the initial announcement was overinflated in terms of what the reality of the deal is. Wait for the details here won't tell us a story that leads it to a higher dollar amount where you start to get upset. I'm really comfortable with where this landed. Really comfortable.
Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first order. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first order.
It's official. Oklahoma is not dead on the recruiting trail.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners.
The Oklahoma Sooners get their guy, one of the top players on their recruiting board for 2026, Jake Krell, the five-star prospect by ESPN, committing to Oklahoma on Tuesday.
Yeah, it kind of shocked the world. Actually, really didn't, because Oklahoma's been trending for Jake Krell for a while. But the fact that it actually came to fruition, because we were also trending heavily for Davian Gross, and it did not come down for that. But if there's one position that I knew that Oklahoma was definitely going to drop the bags or whatever you want to say and show that they're not broke Oklahoma, it was going to be for an elite edge. And Jake Krell is one that is ridiculously good. Like, whenever you talk about him just as a player, he's one of those players that you definitely want to get your hands on, especially because for Oklahoma, the most important thing is you need to have elite edge play if you want to survive in the SEC. You have to have elite interior play if you want to survive in the SEC. And Jake Krell gives you that. The dude is just a monster. His bend is stupid. His speed, his hand placement. John, the minute that I saw that Oklahoma had a chance with him, I was like, I don't care what you do. Figure it out, because we're going to need him in about a year.
He's a very well-versed pass rusher. He's not somebody that just relies on speed, just relies on power, just relies on his athleticism. He's very technically sound. And I think that's the thing that makes him so special already, is that he's very technically sound, and he's also an elite athlete. He also has good bend. He also has great hands, and he really is the total package at defensive end. And so when you get him on campus and you continue to build him up in the strength and conditioning program, you continue to develop him, the sky is really the limit for him. I mean, he wins on the outside, getting around the offensive tackles, bending around them. He's able to set up his pass rush move so well that he can beat offensive tackles to the inside, which is like a big no-no for offensive tackles. Do not get beat inside because that's a direct line to the quarterback. But he just sets up his pass rush so well and so smartly that this is a guy that really has a very, very high ceiling and somebody that could have the potential of being a top 10 NFL draft pick down the road.
Yeah, especially, and that's the other thing too, with that, Oklahoma's going to lose 2 players at the end of the season. R. Mason Thomas is gone. So is Marvin Jones Jr. They're both gone. There's nothing you can do about it. They are both definitely going to be out. And since they're going to be gone, you need to have somebody that's going to be there as a replacement. And Jake Krill is the dude that could be the player that could replace them. He's one that can actually play as a potential true freshman. He's not one that you have to, that you'll work on his technique and make sure that he's really good. But overall, John, the biggest plus for Oklahoma in this one is that if we're going to pay a 5-star like him, you want him on the field. And he's one that's going to get on the field very early. No R. Mason Thomas, no Marvin Jones Jr. You still have Taylor Wine, Daniel Collier, PJ Adebawore, as well as Wyatt Gilmore. But besides that, it's young. It's CJ Nixon, right? It's going to be Alexander Shieldknight. So with that, in that case, Jake Krill could find a way and find an opportunity to get on the field a lot earlier than people will expect.
So much of it's going to depend on how well does he hold up in the run game. And that's going to be the biggest challenge for any defensive lineman coming from high school to college, even playing at IMG Academy, playing against some of the best programs across the country. That's not always going to be a smooth transition because it's just a different game. The physicality, the level of competition, the size that you're going to have to go up against week in, week out at the collegiate level. At the same time, the technique is so sound. That's the part that a lot of times players struggle with the most is, okay, that guy might be bigger than me, but if I'm still technically sound, I'm going to be able to hold up at the point of attack. I'm going to be able to set the edge, and I'm going to be able to do my job and do it well. And to me, again, this is one of those guys that you can project could potentially be in a significant role as a true freshman because he's so technically sound. Reminds you of Jaden Jackson. I know the IMG Academy thing is going to be the easiest comparison there, but Jaden Jackson was very technically sound as a high school player, played with great leverage, great pad level. There wasn't a whole lot that you had to do to fix his pad level. So much offensive linemen, defensive linemen, they want to get up really quickly out of their stance. But Jaden Jackson plays so low and plays with such great leverage. That was going to be what allowed him to step onto the field early because he wasn't going to get bullied off the point of attack. He wasn't going to get bullied in the interior against the SEC. And that came to be true. The same potential for Jake Krill.
Yeah, there was one guy that looked at him, especially when he was looking at like some of the other schools in like Colorado or whatnot. He mentioned he could be like another Max Crosby type, just because of the way that he how fat, like I said, low he stays, his bend, and his ability to get around those edges so fast. And I could totally see it. The kid's game is best. Heck, Brian Smith over at the portal here for Locked On Podcast Network, he was talking about how as a true freshman, he thought he was the most talented dude on the field at those camps. As a true freshman, that's really hard to do, especially with the fact that he's only 240-ish, right? He was like 220s, probably around that time, 215, 210-ish, going in as a true freshman. And he thought that he was probably the most talented dude out there as a true freshman. That's high praise, especially with all the camps that we know Brian has gone to.
Yeah, and if only you have to do is get his weight up to maybe a 250 range, like you don't need to bulk him up to 270. Like maybe you've done with the Taylor Wine, some of the defensive ends, and Ethan Downs. You let him play at 250 because he's strong enough, he's fast enough, he's quick enough that he's going to be a menace on the edge against offensive tackles. So big time win for Miguel Chavis, for Brent Venables on the recruiting trail, beating out Texas, beating out Ole Miss. And this was one of those that a week ago when we were talking about Jake Krell, people were really worried because he moved up that commitment date.
Yeah.
And there was no set in stone commitment date. Everybody kind of presumed it was going to be October. And I think the understanding was he wanted to kind of wait and see into the season a little bit. But then when he set a commitment date, everybody got really, really worried. They panicked. They freaked out. I was like, wait a minute. Let's just see what happens, because Oklahoma's developed a really good relationship with this kid and with the family. Miguel Chavis seems to have done a really great job recruiting him, that there were predictions favoring Oklahoma for Krell months ago. And then they were able to close the deal. And I think not only does it speak to the relationship that Oklahoma's built, it speaks to the confidence that he has in Oklahoma's program this season and beyond. Faith over fear. Absolutely loved that line being put out there that it's a quote from Jake Krell. It's this belief that Oklahoma's going to be good. I'm not going to buy into all the negative recruiting that's out there.
Yeah. And just the fact that he picked Oklahoma just because initially it was October was mentioned because he said he wanted to see what October looks like. So we all anticipated, Red River. That's basically the battle, because it's what it was. It was Oklahoma versus Texas. I mean, Ole Miss was a hat on the table, but for the most part, it was Oklahoma versus Texas. And so everybody was like, oh, okay, so he wants to see who wins that game. And so Oklahoma needed to go out there and win it. That's going to be critical for them in order to win his services. And then when, like I said, he moved it up, we were kind of like, this might not be a good thing. And shoot, he shocked us all. I guess Oklahoma picked up the phone and said, hey, man, you want in? It's yours. Let's go. We've got some other players we're going after. Let's make it happen. Let's just do this as a team. And he trusts the relationship, and he's ready to win SEC and national championships with Oklahoma.
Let's go. I kept the faith. Let's just be real. I did too. I mean,
that's all I kept saying.
Would it have surprised me if he picked Texas? No, but it also doesn't surprise me at all that he picked Oklahoma.
I would have been a little surprised, to be honest.
Well, yeah.
Texas would have been it just didn't feel right.
No, it never feels right.
Never does.
But anyway, can we also? I'm so tired of watching Texas fans try to downplay a player that doesn't commit to them. Just can we get over that one day? Can you guys just admit you lost one and it's okay? You're not going to win them all, and he's still a good player. It's okay to admit that, guys. It's fine. He's still great.
Yeah,
anyway,
it actually is okay, guys.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's just friendly competition between rivals. It's whatever.
The Green Bay Packers are all of a sudden pretty banged up.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast.
It was a tough day at practice yesterday for the Green Bay Packers, as yet more key players exited with injury. Romeo Doubs goes down and stays down, able to walk off under his own power. Lucas Van Ness goes down. He's having a blistering training camp by all accounts. Savion Williams, who was back, is now unback. So the receiver room from last year looks as follows. Christian Watson, physically unable to perform. They have a list for it even. Dontavian Wicks has been hurt now for some time. Jaden Reed, new injury, sprained foot. We don't know how long it's going to take. We don't know if he's going to play week 1. He's hopeful. Romeo Doubs, now hurt. Savion Williams, in and out of the lineup, also a rookie. So that leaves Matthew Golden, a rookie, a first-round rookie who's been one of the most impressive players in camp, but a rookie. Malik Heath, who I think we saw in Philadelphia, has his limitations as a frontline player for you. Really nice 5th or 6th receiver. Really not so nice second receiver. That's all due respect to him. Carved himself out a wonderful niche in the NFL. I think he's going to have a long career. I think he could do more for other teams if he was a 3rd or a 4th receiver. That, like, Bo Melton might be back playing receiver tomorrow. Today. At joint practices, he might be playing receiver. That might be the situation that the Packers find themselves in. Now, we don't know the severity with Romeo Doubs at this point, but here's what I'll say. And this goes for Lucas Van Ness and Xavier McKinney, who's also not practicing. And now, I didn't even mention Jordan Love. We will get to Love in a second. That is seemingly much ado about nothing, but I still think there's some things, interesting things there to talk about. This team is built to deal. They are not a top-heavy roster. If you're, say, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you happen to be losing Tristan Wirfs, and then you're already Chris Godwin TBD to start the season. If Mike Evans goes down, your passing offense is Emeka Egbuka and a hope and a prayer. Now the Packers, they've lost 3 receivers, and I look at their offense and I go, they'll be fine. They'll be fine because they have Jordan Love, we think. They'll be fine because they have Matt LaFleur. They'll be fine because they have Josh Jacobs. They'll be fine because they have a good offensive line. They'll be fine because they've done this before. We've seen them adapt and be malleable in these instances without all of those receivers that I just mentioned. Well, it was Wicks, Heath, and Melton in the playoff game against Philly in the second half, and they had that game tight in the second half. They gave that team everything they could handle. So, yes, you want to open with the Lions. You want to be healthy. You want to have Jaden Reed for that game. You want to have Lucas Van Ness for that game. But the Packers didn't get much from Lucas Van Ness last year anyway, and they were a top 10 defense. They didn't have Nate Hobbs last year, and they were a top 10 defense. And if you want to add the Xavier McKinney piece, okay, that's tough. But Evan Williams is a really solid player, and the player who's going to replace Xavier McKinney is the guy who was the day one no doubt starter as a rookie last year before he had to change positions because of the injuries in the cornerback room. They've already weathered this. Now, they haven't weathered losing Xavier McKinney, who, as I've mentioned and written about and given a lot of oxygen to, he was the reason that defense was able to get away with a lot of the corner play that it was getting last year with the sub superstar level players that they have. We've never seen a defense with Javon Bullard and Evan Williams as your two guys, though I think that's a pairing that fits. They have different skill sets. They're both versatile players. I think that could work. Do you want the one game for that where that's the case, like to be the Detroit Lions in week 1 in a game that you really kind of have to win? I don't know about that. But again, this is a team that over the course of the last 2 years, like, let's not forget in 2023, Christian Watson dealt with injury. Dontavian Wicks dealt with injury. Jaden Reed dealt with injury. Aaron Jones was hurt most of that season. You lose David Bakhtiari. You're platooning Yash Nyman and Rasheed Walker. This is another one of those reasons. Like when I hear, Jordan Love, that offensive line, like some of the reasons to ding Jordan Love's production. The offensive line he played behind. 2023, that offensive line was not anything to write home about. They were platooning the left tackles until the second half of the season when they were starting a 7th round pick at left tackle, who it turns out is a pretty solid player. Then they were platooning the right guard because the right guard was hurt, and we know the center wasn't any good. So like the whole premise, and then their right tackle, who it turns out is a good player, was a first-time starter. They've been able to put this all together before, to just figure it out. I know not everyone plays golf, but they've been able to ham and egg it, which in golf means, if you and your partner are able to ham and egg it, it's okay. One guy has a good hole while the other one has a bad hole, and if you're playing best ball, I've just lost half of you. I just know it. I'm trying to help. I swear. Can they beat the Lions down a bunch of guys? I don't know. Maybe. I don't know how much the coaching change is going to affect this Lions team. I think a lot. And so, do I trust Jeff Hafley? Yes. Yes, implicitly. Do I trust Matt LaFleur? Yes. Especially to figure it out. Like, think back, early Matt LaFleur era, 2019. No Devontae Adams. They just figured it out. And then went on a heater. So that kind of stuff. We've seen them do it. And I trust Matt LaFleur to handle it. I trust Jordan Love to figure it out, to handle it. And you still have Josh Jacobs. You still have Tucker Kraft. Now, Luke Musgrave got a little banged up. I think Luke Musgrave is one of the more underrated players heading into this season because they've been playing a lot of 12 personnel in the preseason and in practice. They've been starting team drill regularly with 12, with 2 tight ends on the field. And Luke Musgrave, like Tucker Kraft didn't get a target in the preseason. It was Luke Musgrave running a seam ball against cover 2. I think they still think pretty highly of Luke Musgrave. He can do things vertically. I'll play yesterday. Corner out from Malik Willis to Luke Musgrave. That's not really a Tucker Kraft route. That's not really a Tucker Kraft thing. His ability to win vertically. That's why I've compared Luke Musgrave in role, not in quality, but in role to Mark Andrews early in his career when he was running those deep over routes and corner routes, and he was winning vertically. Not, a speedster prime Jimmy Graham kind of stuff, or, Aaron Hernandez, the football player. Although Luke Musgrave does have that sort of speed. They have the pieces. They are built to withstand this. If they lose Lucas Van Ness, they have Kingsley Enagbare. They have Barron Sorrell, who's really coming on here. They have the ace up their sleeve, which is Edgerrin Cooper. Just blitz that guy more. Just send him more. Don't just simulate the pressure, send the pressure. They have these cards to play. And so, if they're banged up, I don't think all of these players will miss time, but there's a good chance they're going to go into week 1 and not have all their guys. That's just football. Like most teams are going to go into week 1 going, hey, I really wish this guy were more healthy. I really wish this guy were here. I really wish this. That's just the game. It's about the teams that can adapt. And I think the Packers are one of the most adaptive teams in the NFL. They have proven that in the Matt LaFleur era. Now, that doesn't mean there won't be lingering effects if someone like Jordan Love comes back by week 1. And that's the expectation. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% with their killer last-minute deals. Tired of endlessly scrolling, trying to find the best deal? Well, Gametime's zone deals pick the best seats in your section for you. And with Gametime, the price you see is the price you pay. No hidden fees. Take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets and show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed.
The Browns have a need for speed.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast.
Listen, on the surface, getting a speeding ticket is not that big of a deal. The same thing that I said back when Shedeur Sanders was cited for 2 speeding tickets in the course of like 2 weeks applies here with Myles Garrett, who was cited for a ticket in the same stretch of road, by the way, where Shedeur Sanders was cited for one of his 2 speeding tickets, leaving the team facility Saturday morning. They got back in the wee hours of the morning, driving home, gets caught speeding. And here's the thing, it's not a surprise that either player was ticketed there because there's a very notable and known, it's not something like it's a pretty known thing at this point that there's an increased police presence there, always looking to get people speeding. It's one of those things where everybody kind of knows it. So Myles, at this point, being an 8-year veteran, he should certainly know that. Shedeur's a little, he's new here. He might not have known to at least be aware of that. Myles should know better. And Myles should really know better on a number of fronts because, and that's maybe the biggest issue here is Myles is a little bit different when we talk about how upset people should be by this and how big of a deal it really is. I am going to maintain, getting a speeding ticket doesn't mean you're a bad person. Getting a speeding ticket doesn't have to be some indictment on your character where it's well, you're just, you're a terrible person. Because I'm not sitting here saying that at all. People get speeding tickets. I've gotten them. I reiterate what I said all back earlier in the summer when we had this conversation before. But the reason it's a little bit different with Myles is because there's a repetitive pattern here. He has been cited by I believe by what I discovered 8 different times for speeding throughout his NFL career. I think the majority of those are here in Northeast Ohio. And so it's something that he continues to have be an issue. And the bigger thing too is like everybody remembers that the crash he was involved in with his Porsche back in 2022 during the season. It was like 2 weeks into the season, and he gets in this massive car accident, speeding, hits a fire hydrant, car gets absolutely destroyed, rolls over a few times, and him and a female passenger that were with him walked away unscathed. Largely, they did have to go to the hospital for non-life-threatening injuries, but it could have been a lot worse. He missed a week he missed a game after that, and then was back the following week. And he even talked about at the time like that being a learning experience for him. Something that sort of, and he was younger in his career at that point. Like it was 3 years ago. He was only 5 years. Like we can, people can sort of at least understand where it's like, hey, listen, this is a guy who's young, and young people sometimes do dumb things. Like I certainly did back in my day. But you felt like that was a turning point for Myles to, be careful with the way he drives and just in general. And then the pattern has kind of continued here where, not to say he didn't learn his lesson, but understanding like how dangerous this can be if you're not careful. He learned that more than anybody ever has by coming away unscathed, and he was fortunate for that. And so it felt like that was kind of the lesson learned moment, and it doesn't seem like it's necessarily stuck with that, where he continues to have this be an issue where he's getting popped for speeding. Now, again, I speed all the time. Like I'm not saying, I've gotten tickets and I haven't necessarily learned my lesson either, but it is something that Myles for Myles specifically, it's like something that everyone's hyper aware of because of that accident in 2022. And I also think too, the other element of this with Myles is considered a leader on this team. And I've talked about this before. I think Myles is a leader to a point. Like when he speaks, his teammates listen. When he has a voice and a presence in that locker room that people respond to and respect. And so he does have that leadership quality about him to a degree. But he's also not like the rah-rah guy. He's not necessarily the guy who's going to like stand in the circle and get everybody fired up. Like he is a leader to a point. But like even Jimmy Haslam, owner of the team, challenged him this offseason after signing the massive contract that he did to, embrace and challenged him to be more of a leader with this team and really set the tone. And the easiest way that Myles can be, the leader on this team, if he doesn't want to be like rah-rah guy, which is, I don't think is really in his DNA, is to lead by example and do the right things on and off the field. And I think he largely does do that. I want to be clear here, but certainly, this speaks to somebody who hasn't necessarily learned that lesson and probably serves as like a disappointing sort of moment for the organization that did dole out a lot of money to him this offseason because they were anticipating, hey, this guy's going to take on even more. Again, the owner flat out challenged him. The owner of the team flat out challenged him to be a bigger leader. Now, Myles said that he doesn't necessarily feel like he has to do anything more than what he's already done to this point. I think on the field, he's 100% right. I think off the field, you can make the case that he have an even higher standard to uphold in the community because he is the face of this franchise without Nick Chubb here anymore and without a franchise quarterback to really lean on just yet. Maybe that becomes Shador. I think there's some fairness there that he's going to be held to a higher standard, and that's fine. But yes, like it is a little bit more concerning with Myles because it's been now going on 9 years in this league where this is still sort of a problem for him. And he had the accident that was a very serious thing that, still is fresh in everybody's minds as an incident that should have maybe been a learning experience for him. And he's still out here making similar mistakes. Granted, he didn't crash, and that's the good news. I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill. I'm spending one segment on this and I'm moving on. But with great power, or in this case, with a great paycheck, comes great responsibility. And Myles knows that. He has talked about like understanding who he is, where he is, even if he doesn't feel like he has to do anything more, or he doesn't have to not be himself in terms of like the leadership role or quality that he has on this team. I can understand where he's coming from with that to a degree. Even if he doesn't feel that way, he knows that there's a lot of responsibility that comes with this. And every step of the way, whether it was Jimmy Haslam challenging him, whether it was Jim Schwartz saying, at the start of training camp that he expects Myles to have his best season yet because he got this massive payday. Like, you get paid like that, you got to perform. And I think Myles will perform. That's the one thing you can always count on Myles for. But some of that performance also is, being a leader on a team, especially when you are in the position that Myles Garrett is in, and knowing how good he is, and knowing that he's the face of the franchise at this point. It's, you're expecting a little bit more from him. And so I think this is kind of a disappointing moment overall for him, even though it's not the end of the world. I don't think we have to sit here and rip on Myles. I don't think we have to sit here and say, he's a moron or he's an idiot. Like, I'm not calling him names. I'm not doing any ad hominem attacks here. Like, none of that. Like, people make mistakes, people speed. It's fine. But I just think, like, the repetitiveness of the pattern that we're seeing here, where this has happened time and time again, and especially with the situation he had in 2022, where it felt like, okay, he's probably learned his lesson, to still see this being an issue, I do think is a little more concerning and more so disappointing than it even was with Shedeur Sanders, who obviously is a young kid who, makes mistakes, and everybody does make mistakes, whether you're a kid or not. But I'm just saying, like, it's a little more, it's a little harder to look the other way with Myles, because he should know better at this point. That's the main thing I'm trying to say.
Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first order. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first order.
Maryland basketball could add another 5-star commit. I do want to talk a little bit about this basketball recruiting to start, because I think there was some interesting news over the last week or so about Maryland basketball recruiting that could be really big for the Maryland Terrapins. And it sounds like you guys are all really familiar with this kid, Baba. I don't really want to try and pronounce his last name. It's a tough last name to pronounce, and I've heard it a lot of different ways after watching videos of people pronouncing it. But this kid, this 5-star prospect, Baba, who is actually was a 2027. So he's originally a 2027, the number one player in the country for the 2027 class, has all the traits that a lot of people look for in those types of players. I've heard people call him the next KD. There's a lot of different comparisons. Has reclassified up to the 2026 class. And so usually when you have a 2027, we're still kind of a couple years away from that. So I would talk about Baba, but I wasn't going to talk about him a ton. There was still just a long way to go for him until he ended up actually potentially really being a potential target for Maryland. But now that he's transitioned to a 2026, this is a really big news for Maryland basketball recruiting, because obviously, as you guys know, he's from Silver Spring, Maryland. So he's a Maryland kid. He's a DMV kid. And not every day you'll get a DMV kid that's the number one player in the nation. I don't know how many times that has actually happened. Obviously, we have a really good recruiting area in the DMV with the WCAC leading the way with teams like Gonzaga and DeMatha and St. John's for basketball, with other schools as well. And the Baltimore schools are some good basketball schools too. Like if you think about like St. Francis usually has some good players, and the IAC has some good teams. Like it's definitely a hotbed for basketball recruiting, but still, very rarely are you going to have the number one player in the nation coming from your state in town. And I think that allows Maryland to have a real opportunity to land this kid. I think Maryland's in this battle. I think there's a really good chance that the Terps are able to land Baba. I think there's a real chance that he ends up committing to Maryland in the 2026 class. And I'm telling you, the way that Buzz Williams has been recruiting, the way that he's been involved, it seems like, with recruiting. A lot of people said Kevin Willard rubbed them the wrong way during the recruiting process, that he kind of just laid back, let his assistants handle the work. But it sounds like Buzz Williams, he's the one leading it. He's the one that's going to go after people. He's the one that's going to make things happen. He's the one that's going to look for players. He's the one that's calling guys. He's the one that's identifying players. And I think you're really seeing it coming true for Maryland basketball, just based off the transfer portal last year, but also the way that recruiting has gone this year, because you can see we've been able to get outside the DMV, where I feel like the last couple of years we've been stuck kind of in that DMV threshold, which is obviously, I just said, DMV's really good recruiting, but eventually you kind of want to get outside of the DMV. And obviously Baba's from the DMV, but I'm just kind of say that Buzz Williams has taken the next step in recruiting. Like when you think about it, in our first real class under Kevin Willard, we brought in, it was Deshaun Harris-Smith, Jamie Kaiser, Jonathan Lamote. None of those guys are part of our program anymore, and they were all DMV guys or from the DMV area. And then next class, Malachi Palmer, it depends on kind of how you look at it. He went to school in Baltimore, but I guess he was from the Pennsylvania area. So I don't know exactly how you kind of include him in that. But then obviously Derek Queen, Baltimore kid, Maryland kid, represents that well. Like we were really focused on the DMV, and now we're seeing Buzz Williams able to go all over the place. And I think a big part of that is because he's involved in it. He's making the calls, like I said, and it's a big reason why I think we can land Baba. He's a DMV kid, so we automatically get that plus for him staying home, for him being part of the Maryland program. So we obviously get that plus and that boost to us that feels really good for the Terps. But we also have Buzz Williams, who's actively doing a really high-level job at recruiting. And so when you combine that together and you get a 5-star prospect in Baba, it's really kind of interesting what I think Maryland could do here. I think we're absolutely in this battle. I totally expect the big dogs to get involved. I'm guessing he has every offer. I haven't technically looked at all the offers he has, but a kid like this, you don't usually have to look. You usually know he usually has just about every single offer. So I think it's reasonable to think he's pretty much every offer and can go anywhere that he wants to go. But a big part of the reason why I think Maryland is actually going to end up landing him is if you look at the school he goes to right now, he goes to James Hubert Blake, which is a school. It's in Silver Spring area, Cloverly, Maryland. So I think the interesting thing about that is he's still going to a public school. He's not trying to go flashy to go to one of these big time schools. Like a lot of those people end up going to schools like Montverde or some of these other high school programs that are known to be really good. And that tells me something that he might like being home. And I don't know, there's talks that he could actually end up leaving James Hubert Blake High School. I don't know exactly what's happening with that, so I won't dig too much into that. But I think the fact that he's here still going to school at his local public school does kind of tell you that he likes being home, because I promise you, there are many opportunities. I promise you, the WCAC coaches have called him and tried to get him to visit, trying to get him over there, and probably have talked to his parents. I bet you Montverde is somewhere that is trying to get him. I'm kind of blanking on some of the other high school basketball programs, but I know there's a ton. There's like those core, there's those core programs that are kind of nationally known that all play each other. So, I think that's a good sign to know. And obviously, I don't know the entire backstory behind that, but I do think that's something that matters. That's something that's important for a kid like that. And then I also think seeing the success of Derek Queen, I think really will give him kind of like players can really become one and dones and get drafted at a good spot when they end up going to Maryland basketball. So I think that's part of it as well for Maryland basketball. That's like, oh, we just seen Derek Queen do it. We saw what he was able to do, and he got drafted in the lottery and in the first round. I think I can do something similar. So I do think that's also a really big component of this and something else that's really important. And then I also want to update you guys on some other news. This kid, Jalen Collingwood, Maryland made his top schools for this kid, Jalen Collingwood. So this kid's from Sidwell Friends, right there in the DC area. Sidwell is a really solid school in DC, but he sounds like he's actually climbing a lot of the rankings. It sounds like a lot of schools have started to want this kid. He's starting to climb up the ranking. He's starting to insert himself in a really good position. So he made his final 7 schools, and Maryland was in there. And I wanted to make sure I talked about him today as well. But there was like Texas Tech in there, Mississippi State, Ohio State, Michigan State, Vanderbilt, Butler, and Maryland. And so this kid's a 4-star prospect on the 247 rating on the composite. He's a 3-star. So I think this kid's actually going to really end up climbing. He's a 2026 as well, listed as a small forward, but you probably wanted to play more of a 2 guard at 6'5", but I guess 6'5", 190 for college for 3 isn't the worst thing ever, but you kind of want to be interchangeable between the 2 and the 3. But I think another really interesting player that we could end up adding to our 2026 recruiting class, and it looks like it's the type of guy Buzz has really been interested in, getting guys that are like back-end 4-star players. I think Buzz likes to develop guys a little bit, but know they're going to be around to stick around. So this is kind of the archetype. So big recruiting news. Maryland's doing a lot, man, in basketball recruiting. I want to make sure I talked about it today. The fact that Baba is now in the 2026 class is really interesting, because I quickly, before you get to the next segment, I was listening to something before it, and it said, I don't know the entire landscape of the basketball recruiting in terms of the 2026 and 2027. Like, I don't know the entire thing and how that's going on, but apparently that the 2026 class is pretty weak compared to the 2025 class and 2024 class, that players feel like they can end up actually having a really be successful in that 2026 class, because a lot of it comes down to who else is in your class. Like when you have certain guys in your class, it's just like you might not be as high of a pick. It can be a money thing. Like think about the class that just got drafted. Like if you're in the class with Cooper Flag, you're probably not going to end up going number 1 pick. Like there's just some financial, some NBA stuff that has to do with it. So I think that's part of the reason why he reclassed up. But I think NIL, people want to start making money as soon as possible as well, which is something that is important too for the Terps, and something that matters, something that the Terps need to be able to look out for, be able to hopefully put in money for Baba.
We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% with their killer last-minute deals. Tired of endlessly scrolling, trying to find the best deal? Well, Gametime's zone deals pick the best seats in your section for you. And with Gametime, the price you see is the price you pay. No hidden fees. Take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets and show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks.
Yesterday was not exactly the rosiest, glowing optimism show that I've ever been able to put out. And look, don't shoot the messenger. I can't control what the news cycle is. I just come on here and react to it and keep you guys up to date. That's the arrangement that we've got. So I thought today, you know what? Let's go optimistic. Let's start with Trey McNutt, who I don't think is going to miss the entire season based on the information that has come out about the injury. Dan Lanning spoke about that. Seems like he could return at some point this year. Does he work his way into the fold as a significant player on the 2025 Oregon defense? Maybe not. Because you can get, Wally Pipped or Drew Bledsoe at that point where someone has an opportunity. Maybe he shines. I didn't think he was a starter. I did think he'd probably be on the 2 deep at one of those safety positions. So maybe that means a guy like Aaron Flowers steps up in his second year of college football and becomes a key contributor. Or maybe that means there's a sleeper in the room, like a Solomon Davis perhaps, who I think's more of a nickel but could play some safety back there. Maybe there's somebody that we're overlooking. Maybe there's a position change we don't know about. Or, best case scenario here in my view, maybe Dylan Thieneman and Kingston Lopa both stay healthy the entire year, and they make up the most athletic safety tandem that Oregon has had since Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoy have been running this defense for the last 3 seasons. That would be my ideal scenario. And again, I am Captain Optimism today. That is how you shall refer to me for today's show. I am Captain Optimism. I've heard of this guy, Spencer. I heard he's a pretty good podcast host. I, however, am Captain Optimism. Don't forget the captain, like Jack Sparrow. Captain Optimism. So maybe that just comes to fruition. And could we see him on the field this year? Yeah, we could. And I think he's a guy that going forward, based on the type of injury this is, has a solid chance, a real darn good solid chance to get back fully healthy and be a big part of Oregon's secondary next year and maybe the year after that, and become an all-conference player, which of course we know is what he's capable of being. So that's optimism point number 1. Look how positive I am today, just across the board. Point of optimism number 2 comes in 2 folds. 2 takes, 2 angles, however you want to phrase it, for Jurion Dickey. Number 1, the coaching staff did not just immediately give up on him and kick him off the team. Dan Lanning said he's been indefinitely suspended. They're trying to work some things out. I appreciate that the coaching staff, in this moment, and actions speak louder than words. Not that words don't matter, but this is putting words into action of, hey, we care about the guys we bring into the program. We care about developing them to succeed on and off the field. If it was just about on the field stuff and Jurion Dickey wasn't working in the locker room, hey, we've got a bunch of other talented receivers, don't have to go in this direction and try to work it out. If this goes the way that you determine to be the best possible outcome, Jurion Dickey has a heck of a comeback for Oregon, which is kind of strange to say, seeing as, he hasn't even recorded 30 receiving yards in his Oregon career. But is he still a talented football player? Is he still capable of being that one day for the Ducks? Yeah. And if Dan Lanning and company are able to get him into the right headspace, get him on track, and make him a good player, think about what kind of feel-good story that will be. It would be a reminder, especially for the more old-school college football fans out there, about everything college football can provide to these 18, 19, and 20 and 21-year-old kids, 22, and then, of course, you have some 20, like 6, 7-year-olds that are out there as well. So that's positive angle number 1. Positive angle number 2 on the Jurion Dickey situation. Oregon has now lost 2 former 5-star recruits going into one season. And the depth of this wide receiver room is still really good as it's ever been. I don't know that you can say the high-end talent right now on paper is as strong as it's been at any point, because the last few seasons have been exceptional. I mean, last year, Trayshawn Holden had to have been last year the best number 3 wideout in all of college football. I think he would have been a 1 on some teams. He would have been a 2 on a lot of really good teams. He was Oregon's number 3 wide receiver last year, and probably the 4th best passing target. You had Evan Stewart, you had Tez Johnson, you had Evan Stewart, Terrence Ferguson, and Trayshawn Holden. So last year, you had a crazy amount of talent. Well, guess what? That you can take a pair of 5-star recruits out of the fold and still feel good about that wide receiver room is pretty awesome. And the name that pops into my head first is indeed the latest Oregon 5-star receiver prospect, DeCorian Moore. Coming into this season, and I'm sure you could find a show of mine from back in spring, pre-Evan Stewart injury, where, coming out of the spring game, I talked about every position group. I'm sure at the time, I don't remember word for word what I said, but I can theorize what I would have been concluding at that time, that Jurion Dickey and certainly Evan Stewart were two guys on the depth chart that would take away from Decorian Moore's first season. Well, if Oregon's highest ranked receiver recruit of all time and second highest rated recruit of all time, regardless of position, suddenly has to take on a bigger role and still has some veteran depth around him to help maybe ease him into the college ranks and not put a big burden on him right away, but still allow the opportunity for him to absolutely shine. I think he and Dickey would have been closer on the depth chart than he and Evan Stewart, who I thought was Oregon's clear number one receiver coming into the year. But I feel really good about Decorian Moore. Everybody that has ever watched him play football feels like, yeah, this is a guy. I saw one recruiting analyst a while back say that if he'd been in the 2024 recruiting class, which of course had Jeremiah Smith, Ryan Williams, and Cam Coleman, he would have been number 2 only to Jeremiah Smith. That's some seriously high praise. And by the way, let's not forget that Gary Bryant Jr. is going into his 6th year of college football, was a borderline 5-star recruit when he was coming out of high school and originally went to USC. Justice Lowe is really the veteran of the receiver room at this point with how long he has been there. And guys have sung his praises for years in ways that not all of us that cover the team necessarily expected. I think we saw a lot of glimpses of that last year. Every time he was called upon in a situation of need, Justice Lowe stepped up. Tez Johnson went down against Michigan. Justice Lowe was there. Trayshawn Holden got ejected from the Ohio State game. Justice Lowe was there. Do I feel like he's ready for a bigger role? Absolutely. Absolutely. So I still feel really good about Oregon's receiver room. Maybe this means we see more Jeremiah McClellan this year. Ho-hum, another borderline 5-star high school recruit. I want Jurion Dickey to do well. I want Jurion Dickey to get back on the right path and be a major player for Oregon one year. It'd be an awesome story. But in the meantime, Captain Optimism over here is pointing out that Oregon's still good. Not a lot of places can say that, but Oregon can. So, shout out Junior Adams. And Ross Douglas has still got plenty of tools in the tool shed.